Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. My name's Justin. I'm the founder of the Bitcoin and Blockchain Leadership Forum. We're a community based in the UK. If you're wondering what the Bitcoin and Blockchain Leadership Forum community is, we're a cross-industry community. That's because we believe that blockchain is going to impact all areas of society. So we bring together VC-backed startups, banks, academics, lawyers, financial services firms, enthusiasts, developers, and we've had a terrific amount of support from the financial services community. So members include banks such as HSBC, Barclays, Visa is involved, also PwC, Deloitte. We've also got exchanges. And what we're doing is that we run a whole raft of activities that are designed to enable people to gain knowledge and understanding from the community so they can develop use cases and they can potentially form partnerships with one another. Just before I go into what I'm going to show with you, I just would like to say that I think the Jersey is doing a great job in terms of raising awareness of blockchain. It's my first time ever in Jersey, and I've really enjoyed it. I've had lots of tips on what restaurants to go to and things like that. There's been a lot of chat about on island, off island, which I thought was quite interesting. And I think the main thing is, from the perspective of the financial services industry, the key island to be on is the blockchain island, because that is where all the activity is. What I want to do is just give you a quick overview of some of the developments that have been going on in the market. First of all, if you haven't seen it, Morgan Stanley have just produced a really interesting report, which is available for free on the internet. So I'd recommend you read it. And I just want to kind of highlight some of the key points Morgan Stanley have made. I spoke to the researcher who wrote the report about a week ago. Basically, what they're saying is that blockchain-architected financial systems could boost earnings. So they see the blockchain as a way for banks to increase their revenues. They think that banks have the advantage, that as the incumbents they have the advantage, and they're not particularly worried by VC-backed blockchain startups for the moment. They believe that banks have actually got the edge, and they think consortiums have got the edge. So they're very positive in terms of R3 and other consortiums that are emerging, and think that, you know, they have the advantage. However, policymakers don't want policymakers only want permission distributed ledgers. So that's a really important point to bear in mind, and that's why banks and the consortiums are leading the blockchain race at the moment, and that's a key point. In terms of roadblocks, what does Morgan Stanley think the big issues are for blockchain? What's going to prevent the blockchain market from really evolving? It's issues such as who's going to fund the overhaul of the old system? Because what blockchain technology does is it fundamentally challenges the old legacy systems. Who's going to fund that overhaul? What's going to be the right blockchain standard or standards? And who's going to decide that? Also, there are huge amounts of regulatory issues. How will they be resolved? There's also a lot of legal risks. There's also a lot of interoperational issues. And also there's the question of simplicity. How do you keep it all simple? In terms of a killer use case, there's a lot of work going on, various labs in London we know about who are trying to find the killer blockchain use case. In terms of Morgan Stanley, they believe the best use case is post-trade settlement for a variety of asset classes. So Morgan Stanley is betting on the fact that the blockchain will be able to make a big impact in that particular area. Just going on from Morgan Stanley. Another interesting development is Swift. Swift was mentioned earlier. I think it's really interesting to see the different consortiums that are emerging. And as I said earlier in my talk, Morgan Stanley predicts that the consortiums are going to be the ones who drive forward blockchain. Swift is developing a distributed ledger platform, so they're getting banks together as well. And they're sort of saying, well, look, what can we do together? How can we leverage this new technology? What does it mean? What are the issues? How can we take advantage? And basically, they're saying that further R&D work is required. They also think there needs to be much stronger governance of blockchain. There needs to be much better data controls. there's a really big need for an identity framework. Scalability is a big issue, and security, and there needs to be stronger cyber defenses. So SWIFT has already identified a number of issues which are preventing the adoption of blockchain. Another story that caught our attention was Intel. These are relatively recent industry stories. Intel is conducting experiments of its own into blockchain. And what's interesting is that they've raised the fact that privacy is one of the key problems that blockchain technology presents. It's a really difficult problem because transaction validation and transparency often go hand in hand. So privacy is something which is really holding up the widespread adoption of blockchain. Another interesting development is how central banks are looking at blockchain. In fact, we know that a lot of central banks are looking at developing their own digital currencies. At our first meeting, the Bank of England came along and discussed the pros and cons of actually launching their own digital currency. So we know a lot of them are actually looking into it. The French bank has said that security remains a big issue for them, and that's something that's holding them up. But all of them are contemplating launching their own versions of Bitcoin. The Deutsche Bank is looking into what its particular blockchain strategy could be. Ed Budd, who's the Chief Digital Officer of Global Transaction Banks at Deutsche Bank, has come out in public and said, look, there's no silver bullet for blockchain. There's not one single solution that's going to transform financial services. What the Deutsche Bank is expecting is a spectrum of approaches which are determined largely by business challenges. And then finally, what some people might call a bit the elephant in the room. You go to people in the city and they all say, very sorry, Justin, it's not about Bitcoin, it's all about blockchain. That has become the mantra. But what we've actually begun to detect within the city is that people are starting to get a little nervous about Bitcoin and starting to give it a bit more respect. And this, despite the fact that companies like MasterCard pour scorn on Bitcoin, this is a big step forward for Bitcoin. Bitcoin Core has been released. Bitcoin Core effectively increases the capacity of Bitcoin. So while banks are focusing exclusively on blockchain technologies, it's important to remember that Bitcoin is still there and developing. And I heard today from someone that Airbnb is actually investing in Bitcoin research and development. So if you had a company like Airbnb which suddenly said that you could actually pay for flats and accommodation with Bitcoin, that would be quite an interesting development. So that is just essentially a quick roundup of some of the key developments that we've seen in the blockchain industry over the last few weeks or so. I hope you found that interesting. We're hoping very much that we can support Jersey in raising awareness of blockchain. We're working on a number of blockchain projects, and hope you found that helpful.
James?
Yeah. So at the Bitcoin Blockchain Leadership Forum, I guess you get quite high attendance or quite strong interest from financial service organizations. Is there another industry or the next 2 or 3 industries that are showing strong interest?
Yeah, definitely. I think the legal profession is really interested. They're very concerned about what smart contracts that was alluded to earlier will actually mean for their profession, their industry. If you don't know what a smart contract is, basically it's an automated contract. So how it would work is, say, for example, that you'd decided that you wanted to leave a certain amount of money for your grandson when your grandson, say, turns 18. A smart contract would be set up so that the software, for example, would scan the obituary columns that you'd sort of pre-agreed. And when a notice appeared that you'd passed away or when the date came up that your grandson turned 18, the funds that you'd agreed would be automatically transferred into your grandson's account. So it's a bit like a vending machine. You put money into a vending machine and Coke comes down. There are automated smart contracts that people anticipate, significantly reduce the cost of legal transactions. So we're seeing that the law firms are getting seriously interested in blockchain, but also because they want to actually advise startups and look at the whole Bitcoin regulation piece. So law firms are definitely getting interested. Government is getting interested in terms of how they can slash the cost of services to the citizens. We're also starting to see health organisations are looking into it in terms of what it means for patient data and the patient control over data. At the margins, we're also beginning to see retailers are starting to look into the prospect of blockchain, particularly those retailers who might be facing challenges to their business model. They're looking at, could the blockchain be a way of creating new kinds of markets which they could capitalize upon? But really, overall, at the moment, all the running is with the financial services. We're in a kind of financial services blockchain paradigm at the moment. And I think government's going to come into play a lot more. But it's sort of government and financial services are leading the charge at the moment.
Andy mentioned at the start that Jersey's regulator is looking at, clarifying its position on virtual currencies and blockchain-backed entities. Have you seen any particular movement in the UK around regulation, or do you think it's still at the point that it's people doing R&D and prototyping, and it's going to take the government to make a step forward for actual products to hit the market?
I'd say that the UK government has been very liberal and very supportive of Bitcoin. The Conservative government is very pro-fintech innovation. They're encouraging, for example, driverless car initiatives. They're taking quite an open, liberal approach towards blockchain. They want to encourage it. Obviously, the city doesn't want to become less of a centre of influence. The FCA has launched its sandbox initiative and is looking to sort of develop prototypes and proofs of concepts there. It's still, though, extraordinarily difficult for banks to know what to do with Bitcoin because of the fact that it's sort of tainted by the different ways it's been used. But overall, I would say the UK government is very pro-innovation. It's taking a light touch at the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Justin.